Hi, my name's Phil.
And my name is Rob.
And we've been mates for years. We've done loads of stuff together.
All of which, mainly, have turned into chaos.
But someone then suggested, why don't you do a podcast? That seemed like a good idea, didn't it?
Really did.
Then we realised neither of us have ever done one of those. So is this going to work?
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
Welcome to Two Pastors in a Pod.
You're looking nice today, mate.
Well, let's put it this way. We could have done with phoning each other before we came. That would have helped, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking trendy and you've got...
I'm surprised those buttons can take it, but anyway.
Oh, you could talk in your super extra large t-shirt.
Anyway, what podcast is this, Phil?
Well, here's a bit of a question. We've got an issue we need to sort out.
And I need to look at the camera.
You need to look at that camera this time.
Instead of the clock.
So the problem was we discovered something.
What did we discover?
We
Phil?
discovered that not only can't I count, but Rob can't count either. Because this isn't our 10th podcast.
Yeah, but you know why?
Why?
You're picking on me now.
Why?
Because I've only got 9.
Oh, 9 fingers. Well done. Yeah, so this is our 10th podcast.
I haven't really. I've got 10.
Which is really exciting,
In
isn't
case
it?
people are worried.
Really exciting, isn't it?
So what is it then?
This is our 10th podcast right now.
So it
right
wasn't
here.
10 with Mark Chester then?
No, it wasn't all that excitement. So
Well, this is it.
welcome to the 10th episode.
Yeah.
Now, we've been contacted. We
got
Yep.
one viewer.
Well, our one viewer has contacted us and they've made a request.
Yes.
Because it's the summer, although judging by that jacket, I'm not sure it is. Although it's the
It
summer,
is the summer.
well, it's June, I don't know about the weather.
It's not June.
Can we have a
This
brew?
goes out in July.
Oh, right, okay, fair enough. But this is a brew that was requested. Can we have a summer brew? So when you're sitting in the sun, you're sitting out on the patio,
Okay.
what can we drink? Now, if this is a summer brew,
It's got to have lavender in then, hasn't it?
lavender.
Yeah, well, bees like lavender. It's a summer lavender, isn't
No,
it?
it's not. It's what you put in your
What is it?
drawers to
Well,
stop
then,
them.
Let's just get on.
Right, okay, here we go. So this is quite unusual, but I think we'll like it. So imagine it's a summer's day, you're sitting out on the
I
patio.
hope it's not like the last one.
Because
we
so
had-
do I.
We
Oh, dear.
had complaints from our producer about the last one.
Oh yeah, this one smells better.
It left his studio smelling, and I quote, like a man's urinal.
Well, this is definitely not that.
He was not impressed.
Have a sniff of this, see what you think.
It's not a man's urinal.
No, well, and there's. It's still a bit weak, and there's 2 tea bags in
Do
it.
you know why?
Why?
Because you pressed it down too early.
No, it's got a
You
brew
didn't-
in it.
You didn't allow
What do you
it.
think? What do you think's in it?
Chamomile again.
Chamomile? No, chamomile is not in it.
Chameleon.
No, it's not that
No.
either. Come on, you should be able to smell them. If you smell it, that'll tell you what's in it.
No, can't get it.
Right, so this
Yes.
is pineapple and black tea. I like it.
Now you tell me there's pineapple there. I can smell the pineapple.
No, it does taste it. It does taste. It just needs to brew a little bit longer.
Oh, I can't taste.
So come on then, what would you rate it?
It's not one of your better ones. That one.
Is it
I
not?
preferred the men's urinal to that.
No way.
So that's gonna get a 4 or a 5.
A 4?
Yeah. it's
Oh,
not-
well, that's still up at 6 or 7.
It's not summery. Anyway.
Of course, it's summery. So, pineapple, tea, have a go, see what you think. Rob's got it right.
Where did you
I
get
like
it from? Where did you get it from?
Not a very expensive shop. So there's lots of other not very. So, but you, one of the problems is with doing this brew every time we do a podcast is that you keep telling me how to do it. I mean, you keep instructing me
Yeah.
how to make tea.
Yeah, but there's a right way to do it. There's a white way to do it.
Oh, right, is that and a right way, which is my
Well,
way.
that's true. That's true.
So the question is though, do you like taking instructions? Are you good with instructions?
Depends
On what?
where they come from.
Okay.
If it's down to you,
Yes.
you tell me what to do.
Yeah.
That's a definite no-no.
That's a no-no.
And I think that works both ways.
So, well, they reckon that 98% of men never ever look at instructions. I'm going to prove the point here. I doubt it.
I never have to. Do you know why?
Why?
Because we went to IKEA the other day. In
Yeah.
fact, you were with us, weren't you?
Yeah, we were at IKEA.
And we bought a bench.
Yeah.
Well, Jill bought a bench and a chair.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to look at the instructions.
Why didn't you have to look at the instructions?
Because Jill built it.
Yeah, because Jill built it.
Do you know what? We had a role reversal. I cooked the tea,
Yeah.
steak, and I actually washed the dishes as well. And
Well,
Jill,
poor old Jill's out the back there screwing this great
Yeah.
bench together.
but she looked at the instructions
Did she?
because she was a woman.
Well-
if I'd have done it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have looked
Well,
at
hang
the
on.
instructions.
Let's ask our producer Nathan, do you read instructions? Oh, I knew he'd be one of them.
That's a yes, but nobody could eat. That's a yes from Nathan.
That's a yes from Nathan. But I don't read instructions, I've got to be honest. I did read this week about an American comedian who was having a conversation with his son, his young 9-year-old son, because he was trying to put some wardrobes together. And the son had obviously asked a question about, are you sure that's how they go together? Well, listen to what he said. He replies like this: real men don't use instructions, son. Besides, this is just the manufacturer's opinion on how to put things together. I thought that was really good. The manufacturer's opinion. Trouble is, we have just landed a new government.
We have
A new government.
because this is not in June.
No,
This is going out just after the election in July. So we have a new government.
the problem is with new governments and with instructions and things. I mean, I could have an argument with Alexa or a sat-nav. I could easily have an argument with one of those two. But what do we do? If we've gone out to vote, we've now got a new kind of authority.
It is.
And we live under
It is a
authority, don't
new
we?
authority.
And we live under that authority.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the truth is we live under authority. If you're at school, it's teachers. If you're at home, it's parents. If you're in work, you're under authority. So we've got this new government, which maybe some of us are not that thrilled with.
So the big question is, as Christians,
Yeah.
how do we handle authority?
I suppose, again, a bit like when you're talking about doing things you're told to do, does it just depend on who's telling us, or is it a bit deeper than that, do you reckon?
Well, I think as Christians, it does ultimately depend on who is telling us, because there is authority that we can be subject to, and the Bible makes a case for being subject to the elected government. But there's also authority that would break God's law,
Yeah.
so that this has to trump, not Donald Trump, this has to trump local government or even government authority, but it has to be done in a way that is not confrontational.
I mean, I suppose-
in my opinion, not
But I suppose one of the problems is that no authority is perfect, is it?
No.
Well, not here on earth, at least. And there's no authority perfect. There was a phrase that a friend of mine used some years ago that stuck in my mind, particularly when it comes to elections and politicians and politics, because there's not many subjects that people won't discuss, but politics is one of them.
Yeah.
But he said this: part of the Christian's integrity is our civic responsibility. It's very easy for us as Christians to say, well, we won't talk about politics because that will divide us. But we all have political views of one sort or another.
Yeah.
And we would have voted. I mean, I'm of the opinion we should vote.
Yes.
People died for us to have a vote. We have a
Yes.
democracy. The problem is when you've got a ballot where you don't necessarily want to vote for any of them, which is a bit of a bigger issue. The Bible, I mean, there's a verse in the Bible which I've always found quite difficult.
Romans 13 verse.
Romans 13:6 says this:
Yeah.
let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God, and this also is why we pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Well, what? I mean, there's going to be people watching this podcast listening to that verse and thinking, well, look at what's going on in Russia or in Korea or even in the West, where you've got politicians who clearly are not doing good for the people. How do we deal with that?
Well, as Christians, it's back to what I said earlier on. For me, there's two tiers of authority. Yes, you have to respect the local authority, the local elected authority, and you have to understand that in the sovereignty of God, those people are in place. But the only reason we have to have authority is because of sin, ultimately. You remember, the reason why we have government, the reason why we have nations is because we're not God-centered.
Yeah.
We've moved away from that. So there would be absolute chaos if there was no authority.
Well, Paul says that, doesn't he? The Apostle Paul says that in order to have order,
Yeah.
God has placed people. I mean, the psalmist said he raises up kings and rulers and he brings them to nothing. I mean, but
we respect authority, but there's a line, isn't there?
Yeah.
When we're told, when we're commanded by this authority to step outside of this, then that's when, as Christians, we have an issue, because our ultimate authority has to come from this, because God has given us, 2 Timothy 3:16, that all scripture is God breathed and is useful for teaching and rebuking and correcting and training in righteousness, so that the man or woman of God can be equipped for every good work. So this is the ultimate. Obviously, God is the ultimate authority, but He has given us this word to direct us. So this ultimately is what we look to as Christians. We respect the authority that is over us, governmentally wise, but again, if it clashes with this, then we do have an issue.
Yeah, but the problem is, before we even get to kind of the Bible, and we can read those verses, and they're obviously true, but what about if there are things which we don't agree with that the Bible don't talk about? Yeah. I mean, would you ever go on a demonstration? Have you ever been on a demonstration with placards and all that?
No.
Have you never done that?
No. Have you?
I got caught up in one once. In fairness, I wasn't actually demonstrating. I was trying to get to somewhere else. But there was a big group coming down, and I ended up. I can't even remember whatever we were demonstrating for. I was just trying to get down to another road. So technically, I've been on a demonstration, but not deliberately.
Do you remember the Greenpeace demonstrations many years ago?
Yeah, they used to chain themselves to things.
Yeah, campaign for nuclear disarmament, wasn't it, the CND? And yeah, I mean, what do you think about that? That was a cause that was anti-war, and peacemaking. So as Christians, you think we should have been tied up in that? For instance,
I mean, there's a whole debate on nuclear armaments anyway, which I would take a particular view on with regard to the global picture. I think maybe one of the ones I would struggle with more is think of Pankhurst and justice for women.
Yeah.
I mean, at which point are we saying that Christians should never demonstrate against a government because that government is there, placed by God?
I think there's a couple of things. I think conscience plays a role in this. Conscience that is filtered through the Word of God.
Yeah.
So if something is really troubling you and your spirit, then that has to be checked through the Word of God again, which is back to the ultimate authority. And if you feel led through prayer to make a stand, then that's what your conscience is telling you to do. Then you need to make the stand. But the second thing is how you make that stand.
Yeah, it has to be peaceful. It has to be respectful.
It has to be in love.
Yeah, and we have a voice. We live in a democracy. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, many of Christians around the world have no chance under the authority they're under to speak about their faith, let alone any other issue. Yeah. So we have a privilege. But we do have to recognise that God has placed who's ever in power at the time there.
Yeah.
And even if we don't like them as a personality, if we don't like their policies, I mean, take tax, for instance. Yeah. If we think tax is... Do you like paying tax? You do pay tax, right?
You know what? I can't wait every month to see just how much the government has taken. Obviously, you celebrate how much the government has taken from you, don't you?
Yeah. The problem is, you know as well as I do, I wouldn't have a clue how much tax is being dealt with in my house because I've got somebody who does that for me, namely my wife. See, T does tax. Your wife has to screw benches together. I mean, there's a big difference there. But ultimately, we don't like being taxed, do we? But that passage I just read said you're going to be taxed anyway.
Yeah. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
When did Jesus say that? Can you remember when he said that?
I can't, off the top of my head.
So do you remember when he's talking about the coin?
Yes.
With the head of Caesar on it.
Yeah.
And why is he talking about a coin? Jesus paid taxes.
Yeah.
Now, as Christians, we will often say, well, if it was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. Well, if he paid taxes, I guess we've got to.
But again, there's authority and there's rules that we can abide by for the greater good of the community. But then there's other rules that perhaps that we would struggle. And back to what we said earlier on, there has to be a line, isn't it?
See, Acts 5:29, I think it is, where the writer there talks about the fact that we have to obey God first,
Yes.
then men's rules. So what happens then with regard to the way that we live as Christians? Is there a point where we go, no, I cannot, in all good faith and conscience, obey that law that has been brought in?
It has to be.
And there could be consequences to that.
Because if we believe this to be the Word of God, the instruction for life, that with the blueprint for living that he's given us, then this is what we abide by. Obviously, it's open to interpretation, but we abide by this in love. So if we are being instructed to cross the biblical line, then the answer has to be no, I won't.
See, I always find it interesting that there are a lot of people who don't have a faith, and maybe some are listening to this podcast now.
Yeah.
But we've got the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
Right? And in those Ten Commandments, there are some very, very clear that we as a nation have taken on. Do not kill. Well, we know that murder is against the law. Do not steal. And you can list all the Ten Commandments down.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there are commandments in there that also says, have no other gods before me.
Yeah, number one.
But we live in a...
No idols.
Yeah, we live in a society that will pull out what they like.
Yeah.
And kind of ignore the stuff that doesn't fit.
Well, we abide by the authority that we're comfortable with. So,
that's a great quote. That is. That's true in all places, isn't it? Not just in politics and government. What about work?
Yeah. Well, when it gets uncomfortable, we rebel. But in work, so naturally in the workplace, obviously, occasionally I worked as a younger man.
Well, you used to.
And I remember I used to run a company, and there was a chief executive, a Scottish chief executive, and he wasn't the nicest man in the world.
But that's not a generalisation.
But he would make demands on me, and I would abide by those demands because
why?
Even though it made me feel uncomfortable, because I guess it was my career, it was my job, it was my family depended on the income, so I would take his authority on board. So if he told me to be in a meeting in down south in Tame, where the headquarters were, if he told me to be there on a specific day of the month, I would make sure I was there with all of the reports that he'd asked me to do, because he was the authority in the workplace. And we tend to mainly accept that, don't we?
Yeah, I was going to say, hang on a minute.
We accept workplace authority.
Yeah, but did you do that? Did you do that because you respected him as a boss, or did you do that because you didn't want to lose your job?
Well, I didn't want to lose my job.
Well, there you go. So there's comfortable agreement with authority.
Yeah.
What about in other places? I mean, we all live, as I say, in home, and what about in church life?
Yeah.
Authority, because a lot of people have issues with authority in church, because like any authority, it can become man-based and it can become overbearing.
Again, there's a biblical pattern, isn't it? There's a biblical pattern for leadership within the ecclesiology of a church. But
that's a big word for you. Where did that come from?
There must have been something
in your teeth.
in the teeth. So again, it's back to this, isn't it? It's back to there is a pattern. However, people often have a problem with it because we, as leaders, we don't abide by how we should be as leaders, which is to mirror Christ-like behaviour, to be good shepherds and not heavy shepherds of the sheep, because people, rightly would rebel against.
I mean, that's a term that some people might not be, particularly conscious of. Heavy shepherding in a church. What does heavy shepherding look like?
Well, it's authoritarian.
Okay.
It's you will do it my way and don't question my way. And sadly, we know of men who lead churches who do this. And what tends to happen is that the congregation splits and gets fragmented, and ultimately that particular leadership doesn't last very long, thankfully.
See, in church life as well as in governmental life, one of the things we can do is check with what God has said in the scriptures when we are instructed.
Yeah.
So at TCC, we would ask people to bring their Bibles to check what's being said from the front.
Yeah.
When we make a decision, we seek to refer that back to, well, this is how God has led us and this is what his word says. And so if people are in churches where there is kind of, this is the only way, this is the only authority, and you will do what I say without having a conversation, that's not really in love, is it?
No, it's not.
Now, we may not always like it,
It's not.
but you have to have, God has placed people in authority, a spiritual authority in a church, but under him.
Our standard of leadership, our standard of authority is Jesus,
Yeah.
the most humble.
Again, I read somewhere that the standard of our churches will depend on the standard of our leadership.
Yeah.
And so if the leadership isn't right, if we've got it wrong, we need to be man enough to say we've got that wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I've spent more time in my 30 years of being a pastor apologising for stuff that I've screwed up.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
No, I'm not surprised. Some of my appointments have been a bit dodgy as well.
Is that right?
Yeah, some of them really have.
Is that right?
But I think authority, now we've got this new government,
Yeah.
as Christians, we have to seek the best for our country,
Yeah.
but have a voice when things are clearly unjust, or they are separate from what God has promised in his word.
Yeah.
I mean, last week we were talking to Mark, last episode, we were talking to Mark Chester.
Is that episode 9 or 10?
I don't know. We were talking about kids and home and authority. Do you think that authority of parents has been removed by our society?
Well, I go back to when I was a child, so you're going back to the...
Crumbs, we are going back to the dark ages.
Yeah, and I loved my dad and my mum. My mum could shout at me all day long, and do you know what? Sadly, I didn't really respect her authority because she was always shouting at me. Don't know why. I was the perfect child, obviously.
Yeah.
But my dad was quiet. But if I upset my dad, if I there was a line with my dad, and if I crossed that line, although I loved him, there was a healthy fear.
Yeah.
So that's the authority figure. I loved his authority, and I knew there was a set of rules as a kid, but there was a line. So my father here on earth, it made me keep that line. So when I was rebellious, I might have possibly kicked him in the shins once because I got very angry.
Oh dear.
And then when he disciplined me for that,
Yes.
I never forgot his authority.
I bet
We
you
won't go into details, but I never forgot that authority and that line. So yeah, I think those lines have got a little bit blurred over the years.
See, I would say they've got more than a little bit blurred.
Yeah.
I'd say for our young people that it is incredibly grey.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult for those in teaching and education.
Yeah.
And I think for young parents, I mean, how do young parents bring their kids up? They can only bring them up, in the manner they were brought up, because kind of that's where it is. We've lost here is what is right and here is what is wrong, and we're kind of in this mix. And that's why God puts his authority and his stamp in his word, saying, here it is.
Yeah, I think in schools things have changed, haven't they? I mean, I've been a governor of schools for 30 years now, and definitely we've begun, or rather, this has been going a few years, to put the child on a pedestal, and ultimately giving the child the authority. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that in our society.
Because that just kind of goes from one thing to one generation to another generation.
And then rebellion is we're fostering rebellion because our children are saying, well, I don't have to do that. I'm going to live my best life first. Yeah. It's all about me, but it's not. You see, it's not. It's about community. It's about love, and it's about respect as well. But I think we're losing that.
I mean, one of the members of my family was a police officer for a while, and again, the respect that used to be there for the Bobby on the beat. I know there's not many of them around, but for the police officers, the local community officers, the respect is no longer there. Do you think we can ever get that back, or do you think that has gone and we now have to take a different approach?
I really think we've gone so far away from moral authority that ultimately, originally in our country came from the scriptures. We've gone so far the other way, and unless the Lord Jesus comes again, Unless the Spirit of God works through us in revival, I cannot see it changing.
And I think, again, one of the things that a general election flags up is a whole range of promises. You know, so someone had said before an election, you know, it is the birthplace of empty promises. But it also flags up where our leaders are in terms of their own moral lives and their own moral decisions. That filters down over years. It filters down into workplace, into society, into the home, into our kids, and then it all starts all over again. So the only thing, what we need, I mean, one of the things I've always
We need
enjoyed...
integrity.
Integrity is a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always enjoyed sitting with A-level students or older teens and saying, ask the questions that you want to ask, and I'll give you an answer from the Bible, which you may not like, but here is an answer. Most of our kids just want to know what's right and what's wrong. And I think we have a responsibility to do that. Certainly through church and when we're asked to do that within community.
I think you respect authority when they keep the promises. You just talked about promises, and again, a lot of these promises are empty. To build respect for authority, you have to have the integrity. You have to see integrity. You have to see someone who's in authority who actually does what they say they're going to do. But it's back to this and all of the promises that are made by our God. Every single one of them comes true because He is the ultimate authority. So it's Him that we should go to first for everything.
Have you ever had the courage to call out anybody in authority for saying one thing and doing something else?
I can't recall I've ever been in that situation where I've had to shout someone down in a loving way for something they've said or done. You know, I can't recall. Have you?
I remember a conversation that I needed to have with another minister, funnily enough, who had said something quite clearly to his congregation, which I was there at, but in his own life that was not where he was at. I mean, we all do things. As we said, no authority is perfect.
No.
We all make errors, mistakes that we seek to put right before God and with other people. But there has to be that stamp somewhere. For us, it is God, and it stops at the Bible. But that will put us at odds with our society.
Yeah. Our standard of authority is Jesus.
Absolutely.
We look to Him. We seek to learn more of Him ultimately, and we seek to live like Him. And sometimes, as it did with Jesus, that will bring you up against the authorities, like the Pharisees of His day.
So stick with the authority of God and work as best you can with the authority that we have here in the world.
But don't allow yourself ultimately to cross the line.
Absolutely not. So the good thing is when we go back, once we've been on holiday, we'll be going back to work and you'll be doing exactly what you're told.
No.
You're supposed to work with people.
Oh, well, it's you though, isn't it?
Well, what's the problem with that?
I mean, look, you don't even know how to make a proper cup of tea.
Listen,
anyway.
I'm going to make a proper cup of tea. So that is the end of our podcast on authority.
What number?
This is number 10. If you want to be in touch with us, look at the email underneath. We'd love to hear from you. We don't hear from many of you. We'd love to hear from more of you about subject matters, things you agree with, you disagree with, you liked, you didn't, whether I can make a cup of tea or Rob can count.
Don't forget.
What's that?
To click the like button.
You have to click the like button because apparently it does something. I don't know what.
It's all about the algorithms.
Oh, is it?
I think I mentioned it last time.
Yeah, that's probably in the tea somewhere.
Yeah.
Great to have you. Another podcast in the bag.
In the bag. Episode number
10.